Hey everyone, before we dive in, just a quick note. The views and opinions shared by our guests on Reset Critical are their own and don't necessarily reflect those of the institutions they represent, the host, producers, or any of our partners or sponsors. Some episodes touch on sensitive topics, so listener discretion is advised. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Reset Critical, a podcast where we aim to rise above the noise, clickbait, and distortions of facts to address and level set some of today's most important conversations. Today, I'll be speaking with two guests from Calibrate, a nonprofit organization based in Los Angeles. Calibrate aims to transform the lives of future leaders from under-resourced communities, especially descendants of American slavery, by providing spaces where people, especially young people, can feel heard, valued, and empowered to become their best selves and reinvest in their communities. They achieve this through a program called Connections, which helps build resilience, promote healing, address trauma, and foster community. They currently serve around 2,000 people annually across various sectors and industries. I'm pleased to be joined today by Marcie Gilbert, the Executive Director and co-founder of Calibrate. Marcie is an educational therapist who's dedicated her career to education through various roles, including learning specialist, college guidance counselor, administrator, and researcher. She earned her BA in English from Stanford University and has a master's in special education from Cal State University in Northridge. We also welcome Marcos Vann, the Connections Specialist at Calibrate. Vann, as he prefers to be called, has dedicated his career to empowering youth in underserved communities through roles such as teacher, math intervention specialist, after-school director, advisor, athletic coach, and Connections lead facilitator. He holds a degree in psychology from the University of Redlands. I could keep going because both of you have plenty of accomplishments and honors to your name, but I'm going to stop there. Welcome and thank you for joining me.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. How are you both doing today?
Good. Vann came from working with our youth in South LA this morning.
Today's a good day.
That's good. It's always a good day when you get to work with young people, I think.
Definitely.
Well, I appreciate your time. I know you do a lot of impactful and great work. And so for you to take the time to come sit with me is really much appreciated. So we can just start really generally and basic. I wanted to know a little bit about the history of your organization, Calibrate. What is your mission for folks who may not have heard about it at all, or maybe have never done this type of healing work?
Well, you did a really beautiful job of articulating our mission. I love how you brought in about the best selves. Mm-hmm. So Calibrate is a community reinvestment model. We are training our local leaders, our alumni, to be able to build the programs and lead the programs in their communities. So helping people have their safe spaces to cultivate whatever kinds of resiliency skills, leadership skills they need to then go on and become the leaders of Calibrate and in their communities.
So we focus on making sure that people who participate in Connections develop a strong sense of communication skills and comfort in being able to communicate and tell their stories. And there's a big part with self-efficacy and understanding that your story is valuable and should be shared and heard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the people you work with, especially the young people you work with, is this one of the only avenues they have to explore these parts of themselves, to engage in this type of dialogue and self-exploration and expression and healing?
Yes. We select partners who are mission aligned, and they are people who don't have access to other resources. Our federal government, the Department of Education, has cut mental health support services, counseling services for our youth. So already our schools had a scarcity of access, and now it's even worse. So the neighborhoods that we come into, the communities and the partners that we have, they really do look to us to be their resource.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine this type of work, just coming from the advocacy and working on justice issues and equity issues. I can't imagine this kind of work was ever well funded, but I can imagine that it's much more difficult in that arena given sort of the socio-political environment that we find ourselves in.
Yes.
And we'll get to that a little bit, but I'm sure you have some thoughts on that. I would like for us to get to like how you're managing in this time, in this moment in time. But before we get there, I wanted to talk about connections, because when we all talked initially, when we were thinking about, having you guys come on this show, I was trying to ask all these questions about what is it? How does it work? I had never heard of it. I had been in the past part of some healing circles with organizations that worked with formerly incarcerated people, for example. I had done some of that work, but I had never personally experienced it outside of that setting. So I was wondering, exactly how does it work? So my next question, I guess this is a long way of asking it, is if you could tell us a little bit about Connections itself, which is the program and the tool you use to work with the kids and the communities that you work with. And I guess clarify what Connections is for people who again might not know what is the purpose, what is the why of it.
So I'll do a little origin story. You can
There
do
we go.
a
There
little,
we go.
yeah. Okay. So Paul Cummins, who founded Crossroads School in Santa Monica, he's the first person who implemented this into schools in Los Angeles in 1984. It goes by the name of Counsel, Mysteries, Life Skills. We call it Connections. There might be variations on a theme, but essentially the process is the same. Calibrate, we are founded from educators and former students, now adults between the ages of 35 and 45, who experienced Connections in their South LA schools and then felt compelled to bring it back into our neighborhoods. So Connections itself, I'll let Vann...
As the Connections specialist.
Yes.
So Connections, of course, begins with a group of people who are part of a community, and they're in a circle. They're in a circle, they're unobstructed, meaning there's nothing in the way of them. And it basically is the setup for a safe space to offer people the opportunity to share moments, stories, events from their lives and perspectives from their own lives. And it offers them the opportunity to hear other people's stories, moments, etc. from their lives so that they can find common ground and hear some things from people that maybe they see regularly that they think they know, but may not know as well as they can in order to understand them better. And what that does is it allows people the opportunity to let their guard down and see each other as human beings. And when they have that opportunity, when they're in a community, it lets them, or it allows them to work together more effectively, whether they're part of an actual team, a part of a board together, a part of a group of students or educators in a particular place. There are some guidelines that help foster it as a safe space. And once we make sure that that is addressed and everyone understands their responsibilities to themselves and others, then the fun begins and they just have the opportunity to share about themselves and listen to others.
Yeah. And so do the participants all come from shared experiences or various, walks of life with different types of things that they bring to the table, right? So is it like...
It varies.
It varies. I'm thinking of Connections that we did where there was an older white man who came from a privileged background sitting next to a teenager, African-American from South LA, two of them nudging each other and bonding during Connections. The older gentleman was in his 80s. The young man was probably about 16 or 17 at the time. So it can be something like that, where there's incredible diversity present in the circle, to we're all have a shared experience where we attend the same school, or we all have a shared experience because we're all teachers. But I'm so curious, because you got to experience connections on Monday, if there was something that you feel like wasn't represented, that we said the way your experience was.
Yeah, so I guess what this is actually where I was going to go next. I was going to let our viewers and listeners know that I got a chance to participate in a connection circle. And it was really, really informative, because I remember speaking with you before having experienced, and I had all these questions. How does it work? What does it mean? And then going through it was really powerful. I think that as you were speaking, one of the things I was thinking is, we came to that circle. So let me describe what happened on Monday when you and your team came over to our home, and I had a few of my friends there, and half of us didn't know, the rest, one half didn't know the other half, right? We all, like you said, came from various walks of life. We'd never met before, except Marcie and I, and then the friends that I brought to the table. And I think what was really interesting for me in that moment, I wouldn't say you didn't represent it, but my experience listening to you describe it was that even though we were sharing vastly different experiences, things that were traumatic, things that we were hopeful about, things that we were processing, things that we were grieving, were so different because we all came from such different walks of life. There was so much shared humanity in it, and it made me think, especially in a world where we're more and more just behind our screens, first of all. Second of all, in a bubble. Third of all, so polarized and tribalized into groups of, race, ethnicity, political affiliation, like you name it. I think those boundaries, unfortunately, somehow in some way are becoming so more solidified in some ways. And it's leading people into these silos. The more that you can have connections, I guess, whoa, look at that. That came up organically. You can have connections, true human connections with people and human beings from, places that you may not even be familiar with at all. Like the situation you described with the 80-year-old white man and the 16-year-old black boy. And you kind of recognize all that you have in common. And you take that back into a world where people are trying to weaponize your differences with each other.
That's right.
And it resonates with you. It's a much deeper, I think, like a deeper way of, we always say, get to know people from communities you wouldn't interact with, right? Because people across the U.S. particularly live in bubbles, maybe not on the coast, but if you're living in the middle of the America, you might not be going outside of your community to even have interactions with people who are different religious backgrounds, different racial, ethnicity, whatever, This was beyond that, because even it wasn't even just like going into those spaces, going to a restaurant and eating food that you might not normally eat, whatever. It was connecting on a human level with people who come from like vastly different experiences. And to me, that was so powerful.
I love that you said shared humanity. I saw you at my periphery. And listening to you, it's like going back to kindergarten. Kindergarten, we're not judging people. It's just who's nice, who can you laugh with, who's just going to be in the moment with you. And connections, I feel like it dials us back to square one. The shared humanity is we all grieve, we all love. We've all experienced our hearts being broken. We've all experienced loss. We've all experienced hilarious moments, whatever. Just there's a kind of elemental basicness where we get to just shed all the differences for that moment and just focus on the sameness.
It's perfect. I wanted to make sure that was actually talked about. So I'm glad that we segued into that, because that's one of the things that is a mission also. It's called Connections, what we do. But it really is meant for people to genuinely connect with other people. That's one of our missions as well, is the shared humanity. And to remind people of that, to have them use that and carry that on as they move out of the circle into the world, into their everyday lives, but to have some things that they can recall and remember about shared humanity, and that they've been connected with people that were different than them. So when they're out in the world, there are plenty of people that they can find ways to connect with.
Yeah. I was trying to think about how I would describe it to somebody who's never, heard of it or experienced it, right? And there are things about it, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong and say this is an oversimplification. There were things about it that reminded me of potentially, even though I've never done like group therapy, aspects of it for me seem like this is what I've seen and I've heard group therapy to be like in some ways. A healing circle, people might have heard. But this concept of a safe space to just share authentically what you're feeling and thinking, your fears and your hopes, it's so rare. So what we did, if I can share a little just about the process of it, we all got there. There was a circle built. There were some, objects that were symbolic and meant something. And there were some prompts, guidelines about how this is a safe space, how you should be spontaneous, right? Don't think about like, what am I going to say? Just say what's on your heart and listen really from the heart, and no judgment, things like that. And I remember personally, and I'll share this, and really I'm supposed to be interviewing you, but but it's a conversation.
Absolutely.
As you know, and as a lot of my friends know, a lot of us from the Iranian community in the diaspora have been dealing with a lot of mixed emotions around what's happening currently as this episode is being recorded. There's a war that's been waged by the United States and Israel on Iran, and a lot of us have family there, and we have different viewpoints about, whether this is the right way to get a brutal regime out, and there's been a lot of community dynamic, and so I think we came into that space. We didn't plan this connection circle to happen at this moment, but it was so needed.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of us who have been publicly vocal, about our stance around some of this, we've experienced a lot of backlash, as you would probably in any tense situation in any diaspora community, and a lot of hate, a lot of trying to ruin reputations because folks are really trying to coalesce around one idea. And it just, communities don't work this way. So I think a lot of us were feeling a lot of pressure, especially I'll speak for myself. I was, right? So I've been feeling a lot of that and just really torn up about it, how people could spread lies and rumors just because they have a different political view than I do and things like that. And I'm very hard on myself, and I'm a very structured person, and I think about what I say and I plan what I'm going to do. And, and I remember when Vann, you were going through the prompts. This was even before the connection started, when you asked people about your life experiences, things that give you hope, things that are a thorn in your side and things like that. You were just laying out the prompts of the exercise. And I broke down. The tears started flowing, and I was thinking, my God, Niaz, you've lost it. You're breaking down during the instructions?
You're not the first.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. I'm so happy to know that. I was what is wrong with me?
First of all, this might be your best episode, the fact that you're revealing so much about your own story. It's so interesting. And the fact of this conversation happening during this moment in history, as you described. So I'm glad that that's all getting represented right now and recorded. I was thinking a lot about this coming, of course, here and the kinds of things you might ask. And safety should be a human right. It should be a universal human right. And in our county of Los Angeles, there are neighborhoods where you can leave your car unlocked, leave your door unlocked, walk down the street in the middle of the night and not even think about it and just take a walk to clear your mind. And then there are other neighborhoods you would never, ever do something like that, and you better be vigilant. And you're living in a state of vigilance. And we have kids who have to walk to school with that kind of vigilance and then get to school and they don't get to drop that vigilance because the school might not be a safe place. California's first Surgeon General, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, her body of work is about ACEs. ACEs are adverse childhood experiences or adverse childhood environments. And the more you have of those, the more you're at risk for developmental delays, for medical issues, for mental health issues. Most people have a scarcity of safe spaces in their life, safe relationships, literally physical spaces where they feel safe. Most people, the majority, feel that way. So most people feel like they are in survival mode. They get into a connection circle, and all of a sudden you feel this feeling that the circle is the container and it's holding itself. It's holding us. I don't need to hold me. I can relax. I can let my hair down. And that moment, which is what I think you experienced, that moment of I don't have to hold it together and this space is holding me. And then it's whatever it is. I mean, sometimes you'll have kids who they can't stop giggling because that's just how their anxiety or their letting that go is manifesting. And sometimes it's people just start to cry the second that sinks in, that they get an hour to themselves. For some people, having an hour to just sit and listen and be part of community is a luxury. Why it has to be a luxury, but it is, unfortunately.
I'll add on to that. There's a couple of things that are a part of it that are important for me. And one of those things is in this country, it seems like we're always in some kind of competition. And I don't mean that just in terms of being in school or being at work or being a part of sports or whatever. Even just competition to be heard. When you sit in a connection circle, it is mind-blowing for some people. It was for me for many years, and sometimes I still get blindsided and fall in love again with being able to speak without being interrupted. A lot of people grow up that way. It's a lot of our family structure where there's several people talking at once, or it's slanted and you have domineering personalities in the family, or you have norms in your family, like children should be seen and not heard, and things like that. So to be able to share something uninterrupted is a weird feeling for a lot of people, but it's very cathartic and it releases a whole lot of stress, but it takes some getting familiar and comfortable with to be able to do that. And the other part, speaking about something that you shared before, so there's being able to speak and not being interrupted, but there's also really listening to someone and not in any way competing with what they're saying. Just receiving what they're saying. And so what you experienced was the fact that in your everyday life, professionally, socially, etc., you're competing. And you didn't have to compete in the circle. You just got to share what you wanted to share. And when it was your turn to listen, you just got to receive. And of course, there's some self-correction that comes with that because we're so used to living in competition that we forget to just be. We forget to just listen and not interrupt people. And we freak out when, I've seen people freak out in the circle when they're talking because they're expecting people to chime in and challenge them and question them and add on to their story. But it's like, no, you got the floor. Just what do you want to give?
It blew my mind that happened. And it again blows my mind that you're saying that happens to people because it's funny. I had a therapy session a couple days after our Calibrate connection circle. And I was telling my therapist, and he knows sort of what I've been going through. And generally what you're saying is correct about me. I have rules for myself, very strict rules for myself and other people. And things have to have a structure and I have to think through, what am I going to say? How am I going to respond? What's the next move? What are all the possibilities in which this scenario could go? Like, this is constantly in my mind. And even though I've been doing like one-on-one therapy for a while now, and I love it, that moment and that circle where you were giving the prompts and I found myself breaking down. I was like, what in the world is going on? I haven't even gotten to the content of it. So when I was telling my therapist, he was like, no wonder. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, because you have a space where you can be spontaneous, where you can just listen and not think about what is my role in this and how am I going to respond? And what is this person going to think of me? And no one's going to judge me, as people have been, through my life, but because of the space I occupy, but especially recently, there's so much judgment. And just to hear those prompts of like, yeah, we're not going to do that. It was like, and I couldn't control it. I was really trying not to like ugly cry.
Yeah.
But it was really powerful.
I'm so glad. And it meant so much to us that you made the effort to create that space, to host that space.
Yeah.
It means a lot to us.
Yeah. To us too. And I'm speaking for myself and my friends who were there, just because of everything that's happening. It was really much needed. But let's get back.
Okay.
So that's a little bit about connections for folks who don't know
Yeah.
and what it feels like. And it really is a luxury, which it shouldn't be. Like, human connection should not be a luxury. Listening from the heart should not be a luxury. Not expecting judgment from your loved ones and your family should not be a luxury, but we've made it into that. And so that's why I love the work that you do. And so I wanted to get back to a little bit the impact of the work. So you work mostly, although you work across industries, but most of your work is concentrated in schools and with students.
Not necessarily schools, but yes, we work with a few schools, but nonprofits where youth gather. Yes, and you're right. That is the majority of the people that we reach annually.
And so what has been the impact of this work? I know, I've shared my individual story of how it impacted me and how I'm still thinking about it. How do you measure the impact of this work? I know there's examples you can probably share, but also, what's the follow through? Is it a one-time deal? Do people go through years of this? How do you measure that? And how do you look at, this person went through this program and this is how we believe their lives change it, and beyond examples, larger impacts. How do you look at that?
I worked for the International Math and Science Study, so I learned about how to take qualitative data and quantify it. I started a program in partnership with Cal Poly Pomona, and I have seniors in college who are interested in that kind of work through the Geography and Anthropology department, and we take the testimonials of the youth. So at the end of each program cycle, Calibrate has anonymous surveys that we give to the youth. Some of it is checkboxes, some of it is just free expression, depending on their literacy skills. And with the college students, we will quantify the results of these things. So in terms of measuring things, we do have our data sort of gathering system in place. To me, what's interesting as an educator, when I think about impact, it's not numbers, it's not breadth, it's depth. Longitudinal studies are the most interesting. And the only way that we can really look at that is to look at the alumni of the schools where we used to work. There's a particular school that I would say is sort of the heartbeat of Calibrate. It's not in existence anymore. Community Harvest Charter School. I believe it was 11 or 12 years in existence. Vann was a teacher there. I was a teacher at a school called New Roads, which then had a South LA campus and closed down and became Community Harvest. So there are students that I knew from New Roads that then went on to see what we call CHARV. 95% of those students went on to pursue post-secondary degrees as compared to 17% of their local peers.
Wow.
And those young people will say, because I surveyed them for my graduate thesis, they won't say that it was just connections. It was the culture of Community Harvest, but connections was the foundation for the culture at Community Harvest. And we literally this past Saturday had an alumni event where former New Roads and CHARV students came together, ages 35 to 45, and they got to reconnections and sit mixed up in groups. And I've been reading their testimonials the last couple of days, and you'll have someone like we'll let people be nameless, someone who as a student did connections for 7 years and hated it, dreaded it, didn't want to talk in connections. And yet now here he is, a 40-year-old adult who says it was everything. It completely shaped who I am as a human being. It is how I'm able to work through things with my wife. It's how I'm able to work through things with my colleagues. It is, when I have something going on, I reach out to my friends. A lot of times what I hear from these, to me, they're young adults because I'm a grandma, but it is, they will say, I can talk to anyone.
Yes. I'll throw a little anecdotal to it, which is, so we've been blessed to train several former students. Some have stuck around and they are facilitators in circles currently. Some just came to get a little juice and be reminded of what they participated in before and help in different ways. So one of the stories that I would probably say that this is the kind of story that is one that would be duplicated or was duplicated in a few different instances, which is, so a young Black man comes to share as a man now about his college experiences in the past. And his story is, man, when I went to college, it was really crazy because I knew how to talk to people and I knew how to work to resolution for things that would come up. Whenever there was an issue on my floor in the dorm, I would call a meeting for everybody to meet and I would set it up in a circle and we would have connections, Vann. And people would trip out and wonder how I learned to do that and where I got that from. He had it for several years as a young person at Community Harvest. And so I've gotten little tidbits throughout the years from different now adults, or for some time now adults, who have been able to say, or who have shared that they've been able to really be leaders at different levels, wherever they went to school and in certain jobs where they went, and really galvanize people to work through things that could have become or could have made the whole work environment way more complicated than it needed to be. And they've been the spearhead for real community and improvements where they've worked, as long as it was accepted. That's one of the ways that we measure, is when we have these conversations with these now adults and they tell us that they've taken what they've done in connections for years to other people that they know, to friends, to people that they don't know, and with their families. That's the measuring stick, is that it wasn't just a program that they had to engage in because it was mandatory at their school. It was something that was important enough for them to take with them wherever they go.
Yeah.
And you'll have the dramatic stories, right? Where you'll have the ones where this is a program that saved me from suicidal ideation, or this is a program that kept me out of a gang, helped me graduate high school, helped me graduate college. You'll get the real extremes, but just in general, when, being around the older alumni, they are the mission. They are their best selves. They were able to identify and pursue exactly and know what their affinities and their strengths were and go for it and manifest what to them, meaningful lives look like. And they're happy people and they enjoy being in community. Being around them last Saturday feels like this is utopic. This is what the world would look like if we all actually got the nourishment that we needed at a social emotional level. And then we have the new generations. I'll keep it lean, as we say in Connections. I wasn't sure when I first was doing Calibrate. We've only been doing this programming since 2019 through a pandemic. And I wasn't sure, is this going to work? Because when we had them in our schools, we had control over the environment and we got to see them every day. So if there was a fight, we could just call a Connections and stop class. So I wasn't sure, how does this work if we're just coming in, dropping in someplace on a Saturday morning? But those young people they are now out of college. Like our first group of young people from Calibrate are now out of college. A lot of them have trained with us as facilitators. And it's the same thing. They said that they felt like they weren't afraid to go and talk to people when they were at college, reach out to their professors, because part of what Connections did was made adults accessible and just people. So a lot of the same kind of success things that we've heard with the much older adults, we are also hearing with the younger adults now.
Yeah.
Last tidbit I want to add on to that, and I will be lean with this,
Sure.
but I'll say this. Another way that I personally measure success for the involvement of all of these young people and connections that are now adults is to solve problems. They want to work to galvanize people and bring people together, as opposed to something that you said earlier that you've been experiencing, which is the tribalism, the separation, and the divergence. It's no, let's come together to figure something out for us as a whole, as opposed to me and my group versus you and your group or that group. And that is what success looks like for me.
And that sparked me thinking, I have witnessed our young people in the organization work through conflicts. And it's not personal. I know how to listen to you because I've been taught how to listen from the heart, and I know how to speak from my heart, and I know how to witness you. And wow, I don't hate that you feel that way, and I really didn't mean it like that. It's again, sometimes it just feels like, wow, this is a little utopic. It's also very exciting to see because the young adults that we work with are the mission. They're our alumni. And how many of them have gone on to graduate school or realized that, you know what, was pursuing this career because I had a lot of pressure from my parents, but that's not actually really what I want to do, and then go back to school and pursue the career that they really want. So, yeah.
It's something that can help with trauma, conflict resolution, communications, problem solving. Honestly, everybody needs this,
It is, yeah.
Especially in today's world. But one kind of technical question, the programs, is it a one-time deal? Is it like several months? Is it a year long? Is it as needed? How do you?
It depends on the program partner. So the most robust, I would say, programming that we have is there's an organization that we work with. It's essentially a Saturday school. It's for what would be first generation college students, for them to be work with the nonprofit for 3 years, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades. And we start off the day on Saturday. That commitment from a facilitator is every Saturday morning during the academic calendar for 3 years. And they sit with the same group of students. And in fact, tomorrow, we the seniors on a rite of passage retreat. So we go have a sleepover retreat, which is happening tomorrow. And it could be anything from that to the shelter, the domestic violence shelter that we work with. Families live there for a year, so there's constantly cycles of people moving out. The staff have connections, the parents have connections, and the children have connections. And that's just once a week. I mean, the commitment from the facilitators, they've been doing it for years, just showing up every week. And that's year round. And then there's going to be college classes where we have a ton of partners at Cal Poly Pomona. We've worked with 17 departments over there. And that's going to be a semester where a professor might have us come in 7 times to work with their students. So it really varies.
Yeah, I love that you also involve in some scenarios the teachers and the parents and the community, because I think that can make it even that much more. If you're the only one who's like committed to this, it's difficult to get everybody else to jump on board. But if other folks are exposed even a little, I think that builds. So let's turn to something that we kind of touched on earlier, the challenges of the moment. Everything we're talking about, from empathy to compassion to embracing diversity and actually celebrating diversity and various people coming together and helping people who might not have had the same advantages as others. All of that seems to be under attack, both in terms of like cutting funding for, but also in terms of rhetoric and like a cultural attack almost on this, right? In the public sphere, that these are weaknesses that we need to, for some reason, stamp out of our community. So I wonder if in your work, you've felt it, and how are you dealing with these moments and these challenges?
We're emotional first responders, and we have been since the beginning of Calibrate. The pandemic and George Floyd's murder and the fires and ICE, it takes a toll on our team. I'm so proud of us, how we pull into each other, and if have our own connections, have our own gatherings. ICE at one of the schools that we work in Watts, I think they had like 25%, maybe more, of their families not come back for the school year. It's for who knows why. The principal didn't even necessarily know whether they repatriated voluntarily or somebody was kidnapped or they just were terrified. And then helping children feel safe to come back to school. So seeing, the trauma just keeps growing with the youth. And yes, the funding is being attacked. And yes, that's very intense. And at the same time, people are getting more and more starved for this. I constantly am receiving communications from people asking how we can work with them. And it's tricky because we're a nonprofit, so we're here to be able to serve people who don't have the financial means and the resources. But at the same time, we need the financial resources to be able to provide it. And it's been getting very sad and hard to say, no, we don't have the funding right now to be able to come and help in your community.
I'm going to throw in a couple things that are difficulties for us. And one of them is an ongoing conversation that we've had for a few years now, which is being service providers versus being community builders. So we may have, Marcie or myself or someone else may have a relationship with someone who is a part of an administration for a school or for a district. And maybe they've gotten wind or maybe they participated in a circle. And they'll say, oh, we want our students to do this. The lines get drawn for us personally as an organization when this is just something that a principal or an administrator wants to mandate for others at the school, but doesn't want to participate in it themselves, or doesn't want the staff to participate in it, or doesn't want to make it available for the parents. So we made the decision that a few years ago that we do not want to participate in what I call a box checking scenario. Obviously, people know that social emotional well-being and wellness are important. It's been important enough where it's become mandated in different ways in some places, especially for young people. But if you're just calling us to come do something as a fix-it, or as something where you can check off a box to say, yeah, well, we have a social emotional learning program here, we're not interested, because we want children, staff, and parents to be able to be on the same level in terms of language that they speak and how they communicate with each other. And we know the difference when there's just someone who's in control of something, who just wants to have something checked off to say that they've done it, versus it really serving its purpose or it having the opportunity to really be what it can be for that community of people. So that's one of our difficulties. Another difficulty overall is socially for me is apathy. And this is, it runs from young people to older people. There's so much going on where people just want to disengage and not have to think about stuff, not have to go into their own past to reconjure up things that could be potentially scarring or jarring to them or triggering or whatever the case is. But obviously we know what we do is needed, because you can't really move forward past a certain point if you don't take care of some things from your own past. So, I got done with doing this with high schoolers at a school in South LA. And for the most part, this was a new group who's only done this once or twice before.
Just today you did this.
Yes, yeah. Just the day before I came here. So overall, they're cool. They're engaged, but you look around campus as I'm like toting my things there for my circle before I get to class. And once I get in there and the bell rings for them to come from nutrition or lunchtime, whichever it is, and you'll see students who will come in and look at it and go, oh, Like, oh my God, I ain't ready to do this today, or whatever the case is. And you'll see some students who are in the circle who get so uncomfortable by being the only person who's speaking at one time. So they start digging through stuff, or they got to use the restroom, or whatever the case is. And then you got, of course, high schools who are just sitting there like, I don't want to do anything but be on my phone. So apathy in general, not being able, for people not to be able to summon an effort to want to be a better person, to want to be a part of a community that is well functioning, and to want to spread the gospel of being connected with other people and being able to engage with other people without tribalism, fighting, disagreements, arguments, etc., is a hill to climb.
I bet, especially, I mean, I think it's a hill to climb for anybody. Doing this kind of work requires a level of energy. But I think for some people, as you get a little bit older, you recognize the value of it and how liberating it can be after you put in that just little nudge of energy. But to get high school students to like want to do this, that's a mountain to climb.
Yes.
Bless you.
Thank you.
What's the most important thing that you've learned after these years of doing this work, whether through Calibrate or other places? I know you both have been doing this sort of work. Maybe something that's unexpected that you've learned through this, doing this healing work for so long.
Mine is really philosophical.
Yeah.
And it is selfish too. I'm doing what God wants me to do. And I have found where I'm supposed to be, who I'm supposed to be with at this part of my journey. I feel value, tremendous value in what I do. And what I've gotten out of this is that there should be more of this. I live vicariously through some of the students and people that are participants in our circles, especially though the students, because I'm thinking about how much different my life could have been in a positive way if I had this as an outlet to be able to share my story as a young person. There's a lot of details to my story. And I had suppressed a lot of that stuff coming up. I was one of the kids that other kids talked to, even though I was going through some pretty interesting things in comparison to my peers. So what I've gotten and what I've learned from this is how helpful this is for resetting and restructuring how people operate. And I, of course, want to do this with as many people as possible, but not because I'm a salesman, not because I'm selling something or selling Calibrate, but it's because I've seen this matter to people. And where it really matters in terms of where the reset happens is these young people that we did this with at Community Harvest years ago, who are now adults, who have kids now, who have husbands and wives, they're giving this to their kids. And that is part of the change that happens through time, is something that you learn from your own life experiences, that you harness and that you figure out and put together, that you pass that on to your family members, to your children, and not even just your children, but to your nieces, to your nephews, to your cousins. So it is how instrumental this is in reprogramming people. And it's funny, I'm saying reprogramming because I'm in a fight against the machines, but it's reprogramming people to be human again.
I love this because I was thinking earlier about, the concept of, for this whole podcast about resetting. And I was thinking this is a reset about empathy and healing. But I think more than that, how you're framing it, Vann, it's like an emotional, internal reset that helps you reset how you deal with your own past, your own trauma, your own anything, good or bad, right? And I love that. I love that framing. So thank you.
I was very lucky that as a young person, I carved my own path. I pursued what I wanted to pursue. And if I had a calling, I went for it. And Calibrate wasn't my calling. Calibrate, I got called up. It's been a fascinating journey of, it's not about me. It's about something so much bigger than me. and how to be in the best service I can be to that. I mean, it has a life of its own. And the universe wants Calibrate. We shouldn't have been in existence so many times over, and we just keep coming back like some kind of weed. And it's just, and so there's a certain spirituality. There's times as an executive director where I'll start freaking out about something, usually around money. And Vann will just be like, it always works out. Like the universe wants us. And so that feeling of really being part of a circle as our team, our Calibrate organization feels like the circle. It feels like we are holding space for each other. And whenever one of us goes through something personally, but just that kind of feeling of learning how to be held by a team of people and be working together on a common mission and dream, it's exalting. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So how can, we talked about how I believe everybody needs this, no matter where you are in life and what you're dealing with. And how can people find out more about your work? How can they connect with you? How, whether they want to connect with you through an organization or an individual level, how can they support you? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we're at calibrate.earth, EARTH, on the web and on Instagram. Those are our primary channels. And there's ways to connect with us on both. And yes, please help build awareness about us, help our reach, introduce us to people you think we need to know, who is excited to champion this kind of work. We would love to come to you like we did for you.
Yeah, and you truly did. I felt like I was putting you out, making you bring some of your team and your, equipment all the way, far across town. And it really was a pleasure, I think, for us, and you were happy to do it. So yeah, I just encourage everybody to connect with you in this way.
Yeah.
And we keep coming back to these, through lines and these themes. But more of a personal question for both of you, and either of you could go first. I think I want to know what were moments in your personhood and shaping who you are into the person you are today leading this space. Not like who influenced you and blah, 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 but more like what formed your personhood to now be at the forefront of this work?
So I recognize that my life has been a collection of people who have looked out for me in different ways. And growing up, I wanted to be one of those people for other people. I didn't spend too much of my energy thinking about what I didn't have coming up. I rejoice in what I did have and the people that did pour into me, that did offer me safe space, that did push me. And those are people across the spectrum for me, whether it was my peers, whether it was parents of peers who welcomed me into their home maybe for a few months at a time, whether it was coaches or specific teachers. I knew that I wanted to be one of those kinds of people. Now, if I had it my way, I just would have been rich, and I would have been able to just help people financially and sit with them and then do some of the social and emotional stuff. But it went the way it went, and I'm not rich financially, but I am rich spiritually, socially, etc. And I ended up going into teaching, not ever having wanted to be a teacher. So I got steered in that direction. And then my eyes and my world just got opened up when I learned about connections and was trained. That's when I was set in terms of knowing that this is something that I want to spend the rest of my life doing in one way or another, whether it was formally done through Calibrate, once Calibrate developed, or whether I just was a person who continued to hold space for different groups of people that I come across. But it really originated from me taking a look by the time I was college aged at the different people who poured into me and wanting to be one of those kind of people for others, because you never know who you're pouring into and who they could become to the world.
I get to sit in connections with this guy.
That's fantastic.
Okay, we're going to talk about this another time because I feel like you woke up something in me by sharing that. Yeah, I really relate to what you said. There's a connections prompt that Vann and I've used where you're imagining your life as a quilt and you're just kind of, it's your question, and you're just picking this, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to, just pick a square, and that square being the one that's shaped sort of this moment. So what's coming to me is 1992. 1992 was 500 years since Columbus. There was a tremendous amount of indigenous activism going on. It was Rodney King hearing. It was my mom dying of cancer. While I was going through my personal apocalypse of losing my mom and being her primary caregiver, and so I was 23 at the time, I had stopped out of college. I hadn't graduated yet. So I was kind of in this liminal space. And I was investing myself in all these organizations. I was working with indigenous activism. I was working with the Coalition Against Police Abuse on Crenshaw. I was part of dialogue groups that were forming. There's an organization that was formed by Avis Ridley Thomas called Days of Dialogue. I was one of the first people that trained in that, the national conference. And it was just this moment of, wow, I love being a part of my city. I love bridging and talking to different people in different neighborhoods. In LA, we get so isolated in our little cosmo-provincial worlds. It was so wonderful to feel us like as a big county and be meeting all sorts of different and interesting people and being part of the people who want to be part of the change and be part of the solution and make the world better. And I'd always thought of myself as an environmentalist, and it was a realization that what I'm really about is changing human ecosystems. Like, I want to be about people feeling better and people feeling better where they live and where they work, and somehow, and that was the beginning of it.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. My last question, we talk about resetting critical conversations in this program. I want to hear about a conversation you want to reset. It doesn't have to be related to anything we've talked about. It can be, but it could be absolutely anything, something that you think has just gone off the rails. We need to set it straight.
Mine's a little cheesy.
It's okay.
Funny that you said that. I can't wait till you hear mine.
Okay. Then why don't you go first?
I really need us to open up this conversation about pineapples being on pizza.
My Sicilian husband would so appreciate that.
It's a bad thing?
It is a bad thing. Pineapples do not belong on pizza.
He would agree.
And I'm not Sicilian, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to have something that is sweet on a pizza in general. Mm-hmm. It's not the original design of pizza, so I don't get it. I'm a food separatist anyway, but pizza can have some collection of different things on it. But pineapples on pizza is inappropriate. Pineapple should be more a part of the dessert in some kind of way or something after you've had pizza. I want a discussion about that. And I know pizzas have it your way, but I mean, you gotta have some kind of rules about, how you're going to go about serving different types of food and dishes. There's got to be some kind of decorum about doing it in a way that is authentic to what it is. And I know back in the day, they did not have pineapple on pizza.
They did in my day. Pineapple on pizza, Dr. Pepper and John Coltrane got me through college.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So you disagree with your husband on this.
Yeah. Oh, but he and Vann, they're going to go off at the sunset together.
We will not take you to fusion food ever if we ever go out to dine on us.
All right. Yours was funny. Mine is literally the word conversation. It centers on conversing, and we're in a world where people are talking way too much and we are over communicating and talking at each other. So I vote for changing the word to listenation. Ooh. And I would like to be part of the listen nation.
I like that. Cheers. I like that. Well, thank you so much. Those were very interesting and thought-provoking resets. We'll think about featuring them on a podcast episode at some point, and we'll invite you back if we decide.
Oh, thank you. That'll be really interesting.
But Again, thank you for taking the time all week this week to come and sit with me. And I really encourage everybody who's turning in to view or to listen to look up Calibrate at calibrate.earth, learn about their work. It is very powerful. It is so needed. And please support them and contact them if you think there's opportunities to partner. But they do beautiful work that's much needed. Okay, that'll do it for us for this episode. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you found the information useful and valuable. I hope you take it with you out into your world and reset what you can. Please follow us on social media and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And until next time, stay hopeful. Thanks for tuning in to Reset Critical. Remember, the opinions you heard today belong to our guests and don't necessarily reflect the views of the institutions they represent, the host, producers, or our sponsors and affiliates. Mentions of products or organizations aren't endorsements. We're here to spark ideas and dialogue. Until next time, take care and keep thinking critically.